Hello and welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. My name is Arjun Seth and I run EdBrand Consulting. We are an education consultancy firm based in New Delhi. We help high school kids identify right fit colleges, courses, majors, careers, hopefully someday. And this initiative of running this podcast came about simply to get more communication going with our current students who feel a bit disappointed with what's going on in the world, and their plans to travel and uh, attend universities abroad seems to be sort of in a limbo at the moment. So we just thought of reconnecting with students I've known. And some of them are like today's guest, Saurabh Dargar. Really delighted to host is not just a student anymore. He's been a PhD scholar. He's taught many people. So there's that reverse role reversal that I expect in this conversation to happen. So looking forward to this chat. And my first question to you, Saurabh, would be when you moved to RPI and your early days of settling into a life in a new country near Albany, New York, and settling in on campus, how did you think of it as a high schooler going from India? What was exciting or daunting about the whole journey?
Arjun, first of all, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I think I have to say I learned a lot from you. I've continued to stay in touch, so I have a lot to be grateful for. With that being said, I think, as you mentioned, with the journey and where I started, where I am today, where I'm looking to go, there's obviously a wealth of opportunity to discuss and share some insights. So your first question around sort of what was in my mind as a high schooler getting ready to leave and head off to college. It's a good question. Someone asked me that a couple of days ago. When did you decide that you wanted to go to the States for college? And I actually couldn't pinpoint exactly when that came into my mind. So the question of what was 12th grade me thinking about? I think that spans even further back. If I go back to 8th and 9th grade, I had visions of what it would be like to go to college in America. You watch movies and you talk to your cousins, you have ideas. So I think a couple of things were top of mind for me. Number one was I knew I was stepping into a rigorous collegiate environment. So I was going in for engineering, so I knew I was heading into an academic curriculum that was well-rounded, but also quite rigorous. I went to RPI. It's known to be a very rigorous engineering college. So I think that was one thing I was already prepared for. And to be honest, the Indian education system sets you up very well for that. The second thing that I was thinking about that felt a little more daunting was coming from India, having already traveled the world. I felt fairly confident in living overseas, living in a new country. But I think one thing that came to mind was like, what would the social environment be like? You have perceptions, your ideas. So maybe not daunting, but it felt uncertain as to how you would assimilate, how you would make friends, where you would be living. My personality is such where I'm sort of an ambivert. I'm not completely an extrovert. So some people who are extroverts tend to assimilate in a different manner than I would. So I think when I think back to what was daunting, I think sort of the social aspect was something that comes to mind. But with that being said, very quickly, within the first week or so, I realized that you very quickly find a community. Everyone is still a freshman. Everyone is still coming out of high school with similar experiences, subcategories and different, dissimilar in some categories. So I think embracing diversity was almost the path to finding some sort of unity in the social situation. So I think thinking about the flip side, it was a very smooth transition for me. And honestly, I look back on that time very fondly.
That's fantastic. Also, since you've been in the US in the education system for a long time, and now I think it's 13 years you've lived in the United States, and most of it has been academic related and also now work the last few years. Tell us a little bit about some of the decisions you made and some of the challenges you had to make and change your path Because from engineering, what really happened at RPI during the undergrad years? What made you think of different things that you could study? And now you're working in a medical sort of a powerhouse, Pfizer, and you're a business consultant in some terms of strategy and everything. So it's very interesting to see how you've made those connections. What do you attribute this journey to?
When I look back on it, I think I see two inflection points or two pivot points in my career. Starting as a freshman, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I went in as a mechanical engineer, and right off the bat, I had this picture in my mind that I wanted to design automobiles. My father's a car enthusiast. I am a car enthusiast, so I had that dead set. When I started in college, by year one, I realized that I loved cars. I didn't necessarily carry the intellectual passion to carry it forward. So I started looking for an opportunity to apply sort of these engineering skills, but operate in an area where I had an impact. And I very quickly, I discovered biomedical engineering, which was like almost a perfect mesh between the two concepts. You build technology to help people almost get immediate or hopefully a direct impact on society. So by my sophomore year, I had switched over to biomedical engineering, was well on my way, was enjoying it. At one point, even considered going pre-med. But as I neared to the end of my undergraduate career, I was asked the question, what do I want to do now? Most of my friends were interviewing, they were heading off, they were getting jobs right after undergrad. I knew I didn't want to do that just yet. Reason being, first inflection point was I started off as an undergraduate researcher. So I found a very good lab with a very well-renowned researcher from MIT who was doing some work in surgical robotics. And that sort of, once again, became sort of the backbone of my consistent sort of academic thinking was I want to operate in technology, science, and helping people. So I put aside any idea of working, and I was offered a position into a master's PhD track to continue the work in surgical robotics. So that was sort of the first inflection point, and I loved the first few years of it very much. It was a intellectually challenging time. It pushed me in ways that I had never imagined. It also gave me a lot, something I owe to today as well. The structured thinking, the ability to dive deep but zoom out as well. But towards the end of my doctoral career, I realized that I felt like I had done enough from my perspective in the academic space. I was looking a way to take that academic knowledge and bring it to life. So that's when I circled back to my undergraduate years, and I had also done a double major in business management. And I started to see these like sort of lines connect and in a way make a big circle. So I just found out that there was opportunities in the space of life sciences consulting. Business and science, they come together. And there were a couple of big firms that were looking for opportunities to bring in PhDs that can help, the firm be scientific in nature, but make them come to life very quickly. So towards the end of my doctorate, I sort of encountered my second inflection point where I decided to pivot into the science and business space. So I did a couple of years of management consulting, helping pharma and life sciences clients do things better, faster, cheaper. And since then, I've transitioned on to Pfizer, as you mentioned earlier, and I'm doing similar work but in a different capacity. So looking back, two major inflection points, all driven by sort of self-reflection, digging deep into what I wanted to do. And one thing I've recognized is that what I wanted to do doesn't need to be the same thing. It can evolve. So allowing yourself the freedom to actually allow that very thing to evolve over time is somewhere where you will not only find happiness, but hopefully eventually success as well.
Fascinating. I think just being agile and also knowing that there are people you could reach out to, being enterprising. And I remember that from your high school years in 2005-06. You've been the student leader in your school and making all opportunities happen. I remember distinctly, you'd be one of the students who would be always calling and saying, okay, what do I do next? And how do I do this and do that? So that the energy definitely continued. About biotechnology, very often students come over to discuss this with me, and we have a certain big future book that we refer to and say, okay, these are the careers that you can have. And of course, the evolving field. But for a layman or an eager student who wants to know, a high schooler, how would you define career tracks in biotech, and what preparation colleges provide students to follow those career tracks?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's top of mind for me for reasons you're well aware. My brother is finishing off his 12th grade and in the process of transitioning to the freshman year as well. So the question of what does the space of biotech look like? What do you need to do to get there? I think undergraduate education, especially if you want to be in sciences, so pure sciences or in engineering, ensuring that you work towards solidifying fundamentals is important. So even before you get to the point of thinking about biotech as new drug development or designing new devices or creating new technology, I think it comes back to the basics. So, ensuring that physics 1, physics 2, math 1, math 2, DiffEq, all those hard courses we slog over and do over, long day, you put in long nights for, those actually pave the way in a big way. So I think, what does it take? Undergraduate education, particularly on the fundamentals, is one thing that I would definitely mention as a key area to focus on as you're going through undergrad. Once you come out of those that space of fundamentals, probably towards the end of your undergraduate degree, then you have a couple of different options to think about. Are you looking to actually go into the field of academia? So are you interested in a master's or a PhD, or is a particular aspect of biotech interesting to you? And at that point, if you can tell yourself that you're willing to commit yourself to the intellectual pursuit of science in the field of biotech for the next 5, 7, 8 years, and there's a particular aspect about that that is very interesting, then academia is a very good place to start. It's grueling, but it's a very good place to start to even pivot into academia as a professor, or even going on and becoming a research scientist at large pharma companies. The other aspect is within biotech, you also have the opportunity to actually, right after undergrad, pivot into junior roles within biotech and pharma. So there's plenty of opportunity allowing young scientists or young undergrads to step in, see what the landscape looks like, and figure out what they want to do. Do they want to go back to school and pursue a deeper level of science, or do they wish to stay within that field, but maybe stay towards the more business-oriented side of the business? So taking a step back, there's multiple fields. There's pharma, biotech, R&D, early stage, late stage. There's even finance involved. Private equity and VC venture capitalists are very well involved in all these spaces as well. So there's no one way that you can categorize the space, but thinking about the fact that you want to be in biotech, focus on the fundamentals early in undergrad, and soon enough begin to find opportunities either in academia or industry. And following that, you'll begin to find sufficient opportunities that lend its well.
Yeah, I think it definitely sets a roadmap for students interested and know that there is a wealth of opportunities available. If you look at computer science, and we know that students might be interested in either, say, app dev, web dev, or, say, machine learning, AI, or embedded systems and things like that. In biotech, it's such a wide field, and it sort of is so interdisciplinary. Which are the 3, 4, 5 areas of specialization at the undergrad level or postgrad level students are pursuing? Which are the more popular ones?
I think when we think about biotech or within the medical space, if I can speak to that for a second, as you mentioned, it's interdisciplinary. What we're seeing now is industry recognizes that they're a little behind the curve when it comes to data science, artificial intelligence, or machine learning capabilities. So what they're doing is now recognizing that this talent needs to be built up. These capabilities need to be built up, and they're actually leveraging traditional tech. So you can walk into a biotech company and you can find five scientists, you can find five MBAs, and you'll find five data scientists who maybe jump ship from Uber or Lyft or another Tech Valley company. So I think in terms of connecting back to the key fields that are strong areas to go into if you want to be in the space of biotech, it's within computer systems, of course, basic programming that eventually takes you into deep learning. So machine learning, deep learning is one space. The other space is biochemistry. So if you want to be a pure sciences person within the biotech field, that's one space to continue to specialize in. And then, of course, there's the application side of all this, which is more engineering driven. So systems biology or biomedical engineering. These are three main fields that come to mind that coalesce really well in sort of the pharma, biotech, medtech space, because once again, it's not just scientists or engineers or tech people, it's all of them coming together. So if someone has an interest in medtech or biotech and they have an inclination for data science, that's not stopping them from going in.
Great. I remember meeting you while I was visiting 2014 or 15. I don't remember when, but I was at Smith College visiting the admissions office, and you drove by to see me, and that was fascinating. And at that time, I was really interested to learn about the startup idea you had with your professor back then. Tell us a little bit about, wearing a entrepreneur hat while you are researchers with a team of researchers. How was that experience? How did it pan out? And where is it at right?
I think that I probably look back at that as probably one of the most formative years as part of my second inflection point I was talking about earlier. It's because it's a time, looking back, it's a time in my life which forced me to make decisions and commit to something. At that point, I knew I wanted to transition away from just pure sciences, but wanted to start interfacing with business. So looking back at that, I think that was a great learning experience in a couple of different ways. It actually forced me to make the decision whether I wanted to stay in academia or move to the interface of sort of science and business. What the startup really was, it was me and some of my co-researchers. We were looking to develop some technology, license it out to medical simulation and medical imaging societies that were looking to better their skills. So we wanted to use simulation to create technology for them. We had an idea, we built a prototype, we sourced it, we developed it, we pitched it, we eventually got great buy-in. But the end story goes, despite our strengths, our size, or the fact that we were a couple of doctoral students got in our way, but that didn't sort of, I guess, if you will, kill the passion. So looking back on that, I realized that I had a passion for sort of the business aspect, but I wanted to stay in medicine. I developed great relationships with people within the community. And these are people who are still my mentors throughout the space, but be it in academia or it in some federal funding institutions and things of that nature. So once again, formative year. And to the question of where is that today, that idea does not live in its current state today. But what we are doing today is we're taking similar technology and actually in the process of applying it to developing some new platforms to help limit the spread of infectious diseases, particularly today we're talking about COVID. So couple lessons: technology can be applied multiple different ways. It can, putting yourself in complex environments can force you to make decisions, whether you want to make them or not. And lastly, it allows you to make connections that you probably wouldn't otherwise. So my advice, if you're an undergrad or a master's student and you can have the ability to set up a business and push the boundaries, you should do it.
Great. I also read somewhere on your LinkedIn profile that surgical robotics was a keen area of interest. If you now look at the world where it is, telemedicine is being talked about a lot more, uh, and I guess surgical robotics has some important part to play in that too. Also, data science and things that you were talking about, simulations. Uh, where do you see bigger opportunities? Which big problems can biotech in general try to solve now? What's at the cutting edge?
Um, Thinking about the world that we live in today, biotech has multiple problems it can potentially solve. Top of mind, of course, is pushing the boundaries on clinical research, finding new drugs, developing new compounds or vaccines to actually help problems that face us today. So that's one thing, and that's cutting edge in many different ways, but that's also situational. But looking forward, where this technology, sort of biotech in general, is likely to lead us to, it's likely to lead us into a couple of different areas. Thinking about digital health is one space. So you're talking about telemedicine. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Developing technologies to allow you to get better access to your physician is one. But what about developing technologies that make access to medicines better, faster, and more cheaper? So all these background systems that were traditionally, brick and mortar, very paper-driven industries, technology can really get into that space and improve access to medicines and access to care to people who probably don't have it, and improve the access to the people who already have it. So that's one place where I see pharma, medicine, tech companies really coming together and pushing the boundaries. And in today's day and age, it's because we don't have any other options. The other space is, I think, thinking about the big space is gene therapies. So what if we could find cures for diseases that we've been managing up until this point? This is a very interesting space. It's driven by pure science, and is likely to pose one of the bigger, more, I guess, also ethical questions, but also the more pose a solution that humanity is likely to it has never seen before. So finding cures for diseases like hemophilia is a big one. So I think pure sciences from a gene therapy perspective is another big one. And I think that the last one is sort of quality of life, if you will. So biotech is out here to not only just create drugs and medicines and devices to prolong a life, but what about the quality of life? So what if we could invest in devices, technology, and platforms that could improve our quality of life, and not just ensure that we can live 10 more years, we can live 10 more years in a better manner. So this is more about the lifestyle aspect, using Fitbits, wearables, sensors to be able to track ourselves better, to be able to get better outcomes and actually walk away with more with that exact same sort of set of years of life. So 3 big areas that sort of come to mind. Of course, there's more to come, but also partially one of the reasons why this space is just very interesting to me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think many students we work with would be, I think they'll be more informed once they listen to these things. Because as a high schooler, you're all wide-eyed and you want to figure out things. You hear about these things. Of course, it takes many years of preparation to get into these industries and fields. But going back to advice you would want to give high schoolers who are interested in life sciences, not necessarily just pre-med, what are the few things they could do? Suggestions, books, authors, crash courses, online, whatever, inspirations. What do you think would have helped? Who should they follow? What should they be reading? Things like that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think folks work with different models. Some people have one role model. Some people have multiple role models. Some people don't have role models. They believe in sort of the power of numbers. Looking back, and if I can think about it, when I was in high school, what would have helped me get to where I am, maybe in a sooner or in a better way? I think I probably would have continued to just read a lot more about the space I was interested in. Earlier I mentioned I was very interested in automobiles. I think I should have taken a step back and thought about what that industry looks like, where I see myself, versus today I'm in this field, and I look back and I was like, only if I had thought about it taken a longer view, I may have pivoted earlier. So my advice would be to identify where your passions are, identify what you're good at or what you think you're good at, because it's you're never going to know what you're 100% good at right out the gate. It takes time, but at least finding your passion, finding what you're good at, because those two need to intersect, and then trying to put yourself into a position 10 years from now. So if you want to become a CEO of a company, or you want to go work for this particular company, put yourself there and try to draw a line backwards to yourself today and see what that path looks like. If you want to go work for Goldman Sachs, okay, what does this going to take? This means I have to have this GPA, or I have to go to this school. I have to take these classes. I have to read these books. Work your way backwards to yourself today. That will, it's easier said than done, but that will help at least paint a path to get you there. I'm in life sciences, so I would read a lot of interdisciplinary stuff. So read a lot of Atul Gawande. He talks a lot about the intersection of society, medicine, diversity, multiple different aspects. So that's just one example. From an advice perspective, know where you think you want to be, draw a line backwards, try to fill the gaps, work towards it, and be willing to course correct.
Super. Thank you. I think with that, I want to wrap up today's discussion, but it seems that we could go on for a few more hours. It's so great catching up with you, Saurabh, as always. Looking forward to future success. And we will be organizing a few panels, and I'm sure your advice and the information that you hold in your head and the experience that you could share in those panels would be fascinating too. So thank you again for your time.
Of course, always happy to help, Arjun, and